Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me this morning.
Where are you joining me from? You're in Melbourne, aren't you?
Currently in Melbourne. Yes, the gloom of Melbourne in the midst of spring, right before the long weekend is upon us for the Melbourne Cup Carnival.
That's a good point. The gloom. It looks a bit gloomy behind you where you're sitting there. And yeah, it's been weird, hasn't it? With my kids are all pumped for Monday night being Halloween. And I'm just not in that not as excited as them for Halloween. But yeah, great to have a long weekend though coming up. No, that's good. And Daniel, thanks for joining us again on the podcast. Really, obviously, you're a financial wellbeing coach and advisor, and you work at Tribeca Financial. It'd be really great to get straight into the conversation today, and maybe starting with what is it that you do exactly at Tribeca Financial and your background in financial services, I guess.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Look, from this perspective, I'm a senior financial advisor within the Tribeca business with a passion that sits outside of the workplace for mental health. And one of the key themes that I really focus on in terms of the work that I do with the clients that we work with traditionally, but also non-traditionally, which we'll explore, I'm sure, through this conversation today, is that it's very much around people's relationship with money and enter the world of financial wellbeing, which is a term that, again, we'll probably explore a lot more about today. But yeah, senior financial advisor. I've been in the financial services industry for over 14 years now, working with a big bank previously, and found my way to Tribeca over the last couple of years. And really, the financial wellbeing journey that I like to take clients on links to the work that we do in this space, and it's ever growing, and it's really something that I'm passionate about because it has got such a strong link, money and health in general, but people's mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's a great connecting point there, the mental health side of things. I didn't realize that about you. And I guess going into 14 years, you're almost veteran status in the financial world. So great to link that passion with, I guess, what you're talking about there is mental health and general well-being. I guess anecdotally, Dan, what I know, or Daniel, sorry, I don't know you that well to call you Dan just yet, but I threw it in there. Let's go with Dan. We'll go with Dan. I think it's because it's gotten written there that I used it. But yeah, we'll go with Dan. Sweet. With overall well-being, and I know from my personal perspective as well, like if your finances aren't quite right, or if you're going through a really tricky patch with your finances, far out, it just affects so many aspects of your life, and naturally can weigh you down mentally if they're not in order, or if you just feel a bit overwhelmed with it. I'm assuming at the moment, Dan, everyone and banks and everyone are talking about financial well-being or wellness, and it feels like for me as a consumer of bank accounts and things like that, it feels like that word's just come out of nowhere in the last 2 years, even though naturally we've been talking about it for much longer than that. What's the shift there, or why are financial institutions talking about financial well-being? Is it because it's a big issue specifically now, or is it a bit of a marketing thing? What do you think?
Look, in terms of general commentary around it, I think it has a lot to do with the fact that generally a lot of people have bad relationships with money. It's probably not something that's spoken about socially, especially in our culture as Aussies. It's great to talk about what the Joneses next door have got, and the people next door see that and they want that, which also has a really bad connotation to then wanting to keep up with those people. And sometimes it's not even about that. It's putting the blinkers on and wondering what it is that you can do and what you can control. But going back to, I guess, the banks and even just the product providers out there, you go through the COVID periods where there was significant amounts of compensation or support that they needed to provide, whether people had mortgages and they couldn't pay their loans because they were out of work, or COVID handouts and all these other things that came about. And financial wellbeing was very much a conversation point around, okay, well, what is your relationship with money? Have you got enough money to continue to service the products or the loans or the bank accounts that you might have? That's probably my observation as to where it has come into, especially if it's aligned with a product provider. What's the reason for someone having a good relationship with money? If they've got a mortgage, well, they're going to pay their mortgage back, aren't they? Or they're going to be able to afford to continue to make repayments. Someone who's got really bad financial well-being, well, they could be a risk on a mortgage book. And especially if we're looking at the current economic climate with rising interest rates. This is the sort of stuff that a lot of the banks are going to now see, a lot of people going through extreme amounts of pain, rising cost of living, rising cost of interest rates, overall really bad economic conditions for those who are uninitiated, but also those who aren't, don't have a good relationship with what their current financial position looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great explanation. When you say a bad relationship with money, or the not an ideal relationship
Yeah,
there,
let's go with that.
that's
Sounds better.
that's something that you've said a few times. Now, for the listeners, what does that mean exactly?
Yeah. Look, I think, and speaking from personal experience, I mean, as a financial professional, I've not been perfect with how I relate to money. In fact, the money scripts that I've had, I've been, really fortunate where I've had family to, financially provide a lot of things, which has given me this, I guess, mindset, which is also built into us. This money script or money story is something that's built into us from when we're kids. And so we see, what happens when, back then there was, a lot of cash, a lot of checks, not a lot of use of cards as it is today, or even wearable technology where, I was at the supermarket the other day and one of the kids was saying, "Hey, mummy, can I have the magic card?" Because he thought that he could get the card and just use it and it's magic. It just taps a machine and he could automatically get something akin to surprise, a lolly, or whatever the purchase was. But the magic card was explained as this is, how he can get something that he wants. So that relationship with money is starting early. Now, the not so good relationship with money may be that you could have had a bad run of business, or lost a job, or it could be somewhat of you're a very cautious person, so you don't like to use your money in a way that's positive or gives you fulfillment in life. Or you could be very much someone who's very like a money procrastinator, or someone who's a devotee. There's a range of different scripts that we can talk about, but these are the people that are glorifying their life by overspending and showing people what they have, and spending a lot of money, as opposed to setting aside a budget and saving and setting up for rainy days, having some contingency plans around money. And that's the sort of stuff that we want to talk about. We don't align it to product. We don't align it and say, okay, well, if you don't have a good relationship with money, Tribeca or any financial advisor doesn't want to see you. We want to enact positive change. We want to provide the support for people to have that difficult conversation with loved ones, family, friends, and even promote it within workplaces. And outside of that, support people to make that positive change and say, okay, I don't have a good relationship with money at the moment because this is how I grew up and it's affected how I treat money now. And as an adult, as someone who has now got an income and responsibilities, a family, a mortgage, paying rent, and I actually want to meet some of these financial goals, which is a whole other conversation. We want to put money in its place. And when we look at well-being, especially financial well-being, it forms such a small part of someone's pie in terms of living a fulfilled life. It's actually a really, really small part of it. But because of the weight that it links to in terms of the mental health, physical health, going to work and stressing about money, these are all the things that just change someone's psyche, their ability to be productive in a work environment, and ultimately impact their ability to earn an income or earn money.
Yeah, it's a bit of a vicious cycle, isn't it? No, it's really those I guess those archetypes or avatars of those types of people that you mentioned. So let's call it a tight ass that doesn't enjoy can't enjoy themselves because they're not spending anything. They might be saving well, but they're not getting fulfillment, or maybe they're not enjoying themselves. Then on the other spectrum, what did you call the one that was the one driving the Porsche with a massive
the money devotee, or the someone who's devoted to money and puts it on a pedestal and says, well, okay, this is how I treat my money. I'm overspending. I'm constantly out there. Or someone like a money procrastinator who's also got a trait of overspending and doesn't like to associate with good stories around money. They don't like being told, or they don't want to share what their relationship is. They're the sort of person that will go out and spend money and shout everyone at the bar, but won't tell their significant other at home that they just spent $1,000 on shouting everyone for dinner because it made them feel really good. So it goes back to a lot of the psychological things that we've experienced when it comes to relationship with money when we're kids, and that's when it's stuck in us. And it's the behaviors that we then need to spend a lot of time working through. And that coaching of behaviors is a really non-traditional part of financial advice. And that's what we do at Tribeca when it comes to actually sitting down with a client, sitting down with a prospective person that we want to help. What sort of behaviors are going to inhibit us from letting them live their good life? And a lot of the time, it's a deep dive. And it's that conversation that no one really wants to have. But it's the one that I absolutely love. And it's probably the most important conversation that they'll have when it comes to starting to unlock what they want to do financially and even non-financially with their life.
Yeah, it's interesting, the psychology around it. And when you cast yourself back to your early years, maybe for in my age group, perhaps it was having a dollar, I think they're called the dollar accounts with Commonwealth Bank, which was you do your banking at your school and you put $1 in each week or something along those lines. And, nowadays it's quite interesting. You mentioned your kids with the magic card. Our kids have said the same thing. Maybe we've got a brewing issue there perhaps, but it's really interesting now that money isn't really visible and it's on a magic card or a magic phone that you tap. That education around financial well-being for the younger generation is going to be a very interesting and different discussion and evolution over the next sort of 10 years, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I think there's lots of great people, talking about this, the world of technology and technology enabling us as human beings to be really productive and, saving time, saving money, efficiencies. But to quote a really important person that I like to reference a lot in conversations with people, and I just love his work, Simon Sinek. You look at everyone, they're addicted to technology. They're addicted to their phones. And kids, the first thing that happens when they start crying at a cafe, mum, dad, whoever, to stop them. And that's putting an iPad in front of the kid to give them some sort of stimulation. Then all of a sudden there's a credit card on there that all of a sudden allows the kid to press with their fingers to purchase an app or buy a video, or then all of a sudden there's no responsibility. And in fact, the parents are coming to us saying, why did we spend $1,000 on iTunes last month? And we look at the purchases and say, well, because Peppa Pig or this person or whatever game has come up, and you've just got it automatically set to yes. That's not teaching them good habits.
No.
And they're right in that sweet spot for setting themselves up for long-term financial, or in this case, success, but not so successful in terms of their relationship with money.
Yeah, mate, that's it's a really interesting one, and also I guess from just an example of how tech is great and not so great is how you end up with 5 subscriptions to 5 different streaming things, and you're like, how the hell did we end up with Disney, Netflix, Binge, a KO? Well, I want to keep KO, but the rest, like how do we end up there? And it's quite interesting how tech is helpful, but also maybe not helpful from a financial well-being and education perspective as well. Dan, you're doing a lot of work with workplaces, and after today's chat, you're off to speak to another workplace about financial well-being and how important it is. With those workplaces, where do you start? Where do you start the conversation? Is it really a case of what is financial well-being? Is that where, as basic as it starts, when you start the conversation with clients in that space?
100%. Being able to define what financial well-being is outside of that product conversation that we spoke about earlier is probably one of the key elements to it, especially when it comes to the responsibilities that a lot of corporates that are coming to talk to us about, that they'd like to provide the staff, and from that education point of view. So education, what financial well-being is, probably one of the biggest parts of it. And to touch on that, it's talking about 2 key emotions that I guess drive the corporate environment and even the employees when it comes to their own personal relationships with finances. The first one is having a sense of security, or feeling secure with how you can meet your needs in your life, the obligations that you have, and then also being able to look long term and say, okay, well, have I got protection if I was off work for a short period of time, or had to pay for some small things at home that break down, or longer term if I was off work permanently. And going back to the needs and then versus the wants in life, which is the freedom to enjoy your life. Am I going out and just enjoying myself on a Friday night? Not so much because of the weather, but because financially I'm able to do so. And then looking longer term, have I got really big goals that I want to achieve, and I'm actually on track to achieving those? And that hook of having that conversation is probably the first part, where a lot of employers are looking at saying, well, we don't know what our staff want. They come to work, we pay them for their time and their efforts, and they get money. But what are they doing with that money? Not that we need to be controlling that, but we'd love to know that they're responsible and they're doing the right things and they're setting themselves up, because ultimately it's all about wellness. It's all about looking after people. And if they're giving back to the business, it's a really good way for them to start showing to give some care and love and education into that world of, okay, this is what you could be doing, and actually enjoying more of your life and having money form its rightful place, which is, again, a really small piece of that pie around wellbeing and wellness.
That sounds very good, like a very good start for a lot of workplaces. And I guess, going back maybe 5 years, even financial wellbeing in a workplace setting, I don't know that it was talked about, or if it was very early days. Yeah. I think as well, if you consider the last few years of COVID and just rapidly changing workplaces and economic environments, it seems like workplaces are now entering this conversation and understanding that real strong connection between financial well-being, mental well-being, social well-being. There's obviously a lot of pillars of well-being. Financial one, actually, I kind of, when I speak of it, I always say that it's like, if that's just a bit NQR, it's like a domino effect into those other areas of your life, which can inhibit a lot of progress. Even social well-being, if you're financially stressed, you're not going to be as well connected, and your relationships can be really impaired, especially in I don't know the stats around divorces or but I'd imagine that there's a financial element there where if things go wrong or they're a little bit NQR, I'd say finances might be part of a broader problem perhaps. But it's quite interesting when you start considering the broader impact of financial well-being. Dan, is there an exercise as well called the financial well-being matrix? Is that what you were just talking about there, that sort of needs and wants?
Yeah, 100%. So one of the exercises that we get the participants in the room, and that goes all the way from, the senior leaders in a business, even, we've had CEOs join our calls and conferences to really dive into what it is, and, that we're talking about, all the way down to, the front end staff who are customer facing, or, on the phones dealing with clients who are going through their own challenges, over the last few years as well. So the financial wellbeing matrix talks about that sense of security, freedom of choice breakdown. We've got those 4 quadrants looking in the present and what we have in terms of the relationship, in terms of control of finances, the freedom of choice to then use money in the now, and what the relationship is it's a score. 10, self-reflective. Am I killing it in the current time, or am I feeling really stressed and overwhelmed? And then drawing a line in the sand and looking into the future. Well, how do you feel about your future control and security? And then looking at the fact of, okay, well, if you're having freedom now, is that coming at the cost of a long-term goal that you're trying to achieve? Or, are you feeling that you're on track to meet those bigger goals whilst also enjoying your life now? And it's a really hard conversation, because even sitting down with those in a room, and I've had people reflect on it internally when they're sitting with their friends at work, and so many are like, I feel like I earn money. I feel like we go out and enjoy life. But if I had to draw a line and look to the future, I'd bury my head in the sand, because I don't know what that looks like. And that also then leans into the next type of work that we do, which is around planning and goal setting about what a good life looks like. And again, having those goals, having those motivators forms one part of a really small piece of a pie. But you look at the health, wealth, and happiness of people. There's all these other offshoots to wellbeing that you started to talk about. And again, money forms such a small piece of that pie, but it's such a heavy weight that everyone carries around in that backpack. It's a huge rock.
Absolutely. And, even if I remember doing some back at university doing, sociology, why can't I say that word properly? Basically looking at the, like people with low economic, socioeconomic status versus those with high. And basically there was a really strong link between low socioeconomic status and health outcomes overall as well. I'm not smart enough to remember the real stats on that. However, there's just such a strong correlation there that it really, made you think around, well, access to healthcare, all of those things. There's a lot of macro environment sort of factors that contribute to that as well. With your clients, Dan, that you have at Tribeca, and we've talked about the workshops and the programs that you do in workplaces for individuals that come in. What would be their biggest challenge? Is it planning? Is it behaviors? Or is it a bit of everything? If you could sort of shed some light on that one.
Yeah, that's it's a hard question to answer, to put sort of one category into it. But we get someone who comes in who wants to start investing, or someone who comes in and they earn a lot of money, but at the end of the month, they've got nothing in their bank account. And the conversation is to, okay, well, what do you want to get out of this experience with us? It's really exploring and understanding what it is they want. And then our role as professional financial advisors is to extract as much information as we can by questioning techniques and understanding it, and having the bravery and being bold and screwing the status quo of, putting money into an investment just to have an investment return. Well, what's the goal that sits behind that? Peeling back the onion, going layer by layer into the core, saying, well, what is it that you want out of this and why? And even that money conversation, when you're sitting across from a couple, there's probably 2 people in the room that have got 2 money stories. They just don't know it, or they haven't spoken about it. And it can be really confronting. In fact, I've probably spent more time in front of clients where we have that difficult conversation, and you can easily see and unpack the fact that one person is the spender, the other person is the saver. And it's about going above and beyond and saying, okay, well, given that this is the case, and we don't want to label you, but we certainly want to spend the time and the discomfort of, okay, well, if your behaviors are impacting your long-term goals, how do you think that's going to make you feel long-term? And if that's a married couple, you talk about the divorce rates. A lot of the issues spawning from finance attribute to the higher divorce rates in a lot of circumstances, because everyone's unhappy about money and not actually talking about it, or someone's got a really bad behavior with money that impacts the relationship. So it's a really hard thing to put a finger on to say it's one specific thing, but it all comes back to that financial well-being conversation. And then taking it from there, because that's how you can clearly set goals. You can have really clear conversations. You can improve that conversation. Clients that I started working with 12 months ago, they were only going to be with me for sort of 6 to 12 months, and they were really explicit about that. And then I just asked them, I said, we're going to look to continue doing some work together. I said, we love catching up with you every 3 months because we talk about money now, whereas we didn't before. And it's really just that check-in to say, okay, well, there's a 3-way conversation going on between them, and then I'm that sort of mediator in between and challenging them to think differently and giving them the confidence to actually go and do some other things, or them bouncing ideas back off me. And that's really fulfilling and really a big part of what I love, what we actually do here at Tribeca. And why I love what I do as a financial advisor, and helping people is a huge part of my life, making the world a happier place for as many people as possible.
Yeah, that's great. And it's a very much a coaching approach to a couple in the case that you were mentioning there. I also imagine that for different life stages come different goals, or different things come on the radar for some people, whether that's retirement or, as people are maybe in the younger years thinking or perhaps considering buying a house. So there's all those different, different life events that occur along the journey as well. Dan, I'm wondering as well, just with workplace well-being, or in this case, financial well-being, and the things that you're doing at Tribeca, where do you see that come? At the moment, it's obviously the infancy of financial well-being, I think, anyway, in workplace settings where it's coming into the workplace, and people are opening up conversations and kicking down doors in hypothetically to create that great conversation around finances. Yeah. Where do you think it goes from here, obviously, over the next 5 years? Sort of, if you could sort of forecast ahead, where do you think it ends up?
Well, I think it's like an iceberg, right? We're at the surface level, and the picture, and those sort of watching and listening at home, you look at any of the analogies that talk about the iceberg impact, and what is not visible is really the big part of what we can see in the industry around financial literacy, especially around helping people make good, smart financial decisions with economic environments that we're going through, and probably just getting people to do the doing, sitting down, working through a budget. Budgets aren't fun. So why don't you use the technology? And there's lots of technology available out there to help link to your bank account, to give you an idea as to what's coming in and what's going out, and really diving into that. And not many people are using cash these days, so they're not physically exchanging money. But then we look at the next 5 years, and I think there's lots of workplaces that are going to realize, well, from a mental health and well-being perspective, money is going to be a significant contributor to poor performance and productivity. And if people are coming to work unhappy, and that's a result of poor relationships at home, fighting about money, or even just their general, they're coming to work to earn money to live a life, that's a really important part to start thinking about. How are we helping and supporting our employees, the people that are investing themselves in our business, to actually then take a step forward and say, okay, we want to be the ones to help, demystify and destigmatize the stress around, mental health, but also what money does to that. And that's where we can come in. That's what I love to do. And if I can sit in front of someone and start the conversation, even if it doesn't change, significant behaviors straight away, but they can start conversing when they haven't before, well, that's a significant shift. That's moving from 0 to 1 instantaneously. And then the only way is up from there. And it's up to them to do that. And it's up to the businesses to want to do that, because it could come at a really significant cost later on down the track if they don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a difficult conversation, or it's a confronting conversation, that maybe that initial questioning, but yeah, if you get someone from 0 to 1 in the behavioural change sort of matrix, if you like, it's sort of a kick to the next thing, which is really consideration and considering behaviours and considering changing
Exactly.
perhaps changing behaviour, which is I couldn't agree more with you. Being in the health field, sometimes people come in and like it's not groundbreaking stuff if you look at it from afar, but it actually is as well. So the small things can create big change. Dan, one thing we had at our workplace a few years ago, we had some financial wellbeing training internally, and we had a youngish team at the time. It was just what I wanted to share with you is how good it was just to open up that conversation, because because of the people that were in the room. We had some older team members with some younger ones that were kind of new. And what actually happened was, which I didn't expect, I thought it might be a session where everyone just goes into their own world of thinking about it. Everyone started talking. So we started, things that the senior guys were talking about, things like super and like all the stuff the younger guys wanted to know about, and buying houses. And it was really that in that group environment, it basically became a group coaching / therapy session for the team. And I was in the room as well. So it was just great to learn about what people were thinking and considering. And if you're an employer, it's not like, oh, you do this and then you need to, that means you need to pay everyone more money. It's actually just that education piece that is completely missing most of the time. Let's be honest. So, yeah, I thought I'd share that one with you.
And conversation to that point, I think, and in the mental health space that I work in outside of this, from a charitable and giving and being a buddy, working with an organisation that the biggest focus is all about having conversation and talking, and being a buddy and a friend to people to actually have a conversation. And that's no different to having a money conversation, because talking helps, and talking is so important. So it's a really, really significant part of this conversation. And unfortunately, when it comes to money, you don't have to open up your bank accounts to those at work. But if you talk about the relationship that you have and say, yeah, I spend too much money, as a team, how good is it to turn around and say, hey guys, let's do all in, where everyone brings their lunch to work for a couple of weeks and changes the behavior. And then on a Friday at the end of the month, let's all go out and have lunch together as a team. Like, it'd be like going back to school and saying, oh, what have you got in your lunchbox? Or, hey, let's trade a snack for an LCM. I know that's probably showing my age now, from back when I was at school.
Yeah.
But that's the sort of stuff that does change people's behaviors. It's that herd mentality, that group together, and saying, let's do it together. You don't want to isolate yourself. That's what most people do when they are mentally unhealthy or don't have a good relationship with their health. And finances are no different.
Absolutely. Dan, thanks so much for your time. That was really insightful, and I love what you do at Tribeca Financial, and obviously also yourself as a financial wellbeing coach. Mate, great to chat, and talk soon.
Thanks for having us, Tom. All the best.